The cellar door slammed shut above her head with such violence that dust rained down from the wooden beams, and Willa Winters knew with absolute certainty that her husband intended for her to die here. She collapsed against the cold stone wall, her knees buckling as the sound of the bolt sliding into place echoed through the darkness. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Marcus had shoved her down these stairs, 3 days since she'd had anything but the few drops of moisture she could lick from the walls, 3 days since she'd realized that the man she married was a monster in ways she'd never imagined. The cellar was barely 6 feet wide and perhaps 10 feet long, a forgotten space beneath their modern townhouse that Marcus had discovered during renovations. He'd been so pleased with himself, talking about wine storage and extra space. Willa pressed her palm against her stomach, feeling the hollow ache that had progressed from discomfort to agony. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. Her tongue felt thick in her mouth. She'd screamed herself hoarse the first day. The second day, she'd tried to find a way out, running her hands over every inch of stone and mortar until her fingers bled. Today, the third day, she could barely move. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd spent 2 years trying to leave Marcus, 2 years enduring his controlling behavior, his jealousy, his rage, only to end up here because she'd finally filed the divorce papers. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, though she didn't know who she was begging. God had never answered her prayers before. Her family was 3 states away, convinced by Marcus's charm that Willa was the unstable one. Her friends had slowly been cut from her life, one by one, until she had no one. No one except a name she'd found in a book. It was ridiculous, the kind of thing she would have laughed at a month ago. She'd discovered the leather-bound volume in an antique shop, drawn to it by some impulse she couldn't name. The pages were yellowed and fragile, filled with spidery handwriting in a language she couldn't read. But there was one page, near the middle, that had been written in English. A single passage that had burned itself into her memory. "When death draws near, and hope is lost, speak the name of the Ancient One. Valdrin Drakul, King of the Endless Night, hears all who call in desperation. But beware, for his aid comes with a price, and his mercy is not the mercy of men." Willa had read it a dozen times, fascinated by the melodrama of it. She'd even laughed, imagining some Victorian writer crafting Gothic horror by candlelight. But she'd also memorized it, the way you memorize songs or poems that strike some chord in your soul. Now, lying in the darkness with death creeping closer with every heartbeat, those words didn't seem so ridiculous anymore. "Valdrin Drakul," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "King of the Endless Night." Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her temples. She was going to die here, alone in the dark, and Marcus would tell everyone she'd run away, that she'd been unstable, that he'd tried so hard to help her. He'd play the grieving husband, and no one would ever know. "Please," she whispered again, "Valdrin Drakul, I'm begging you, I don't want to die like this." The temperature in the cellar dropped so suddenly that she could see her breath misting in front of her face. Willa's eyes snapped open, her heart hammering against her ribs. The darkness seemed to thicken, to coalesce, and then there was light. Not warm light, not the light of lamps or candles, but a cold silver luminescence that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. And in that light stood a man. No, not a man. Willa knew that immediately, knew it in the primitive part of her brain that still remembered when humans were prey. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a presence that filled the small cellar until she felt she could barely breathe. His hair was white, not the white of age, but the pure white of snow or marble, falling past his shoulders in a straight, heavy curtain. His skin was equally pale, luminous in the strange light, and his face was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that were almost too perfectly shaped. But his eyes were what held her frozen. They were crimson, the deep red of fresh blood, and they looked at her with an intensity that made her feel like he could see every thought in her head, every secret in her heart. He wore black, she realized dimly. All black, from the high-collared coat that fell to his knees to the boots on his feet. Everything about him spoke of old money and older power, of nobility from a time when noble meant something different than it did today. "You called," he said, and his voice was like nothing she'd ever heard, deep, resonant, with an accent she couldn't place. Old English, perhaps, or something older still. You spoke my name in desperation and despair, and so I have come." Willa tried to speak and found she couldn't. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. This couldn't be real. She was hallucinating from dehydration, her dying brain conjuring fairy tales to ease her passing. Valdrin Drackle moved closer, and she realized he didn't walk so much as glide, his movements impossibly smooth. He knelt beside her, and even crouched down, he seemed to tower over her. One pale hand reached out, his fingers cool against her forehead. "You are dying," he said, and there was something in his voice that might have been anger. Slowly, painfully, locked away like an animal. "Who has done this to you?" "My husband," Willa managed to croak out. "Marcus. He locked me down here. I filed for divorce, and he locked me down here to die." Those crimson eyes flashed with something terrible and beautiful. "A human did this to you? Your own mate?" "He's not my mate," Willa said, and she was crying now. She couldn't help it. "He's a monster. I thought I knew him, thought I loved him, but he's been destroying me piece by piece for 2 years. I tried to leave, and he did this." Valdrin was silent for a long moment, studying her face. Then he said, very quietly, "You're correct. He's a monster. But not in the way you think." He paused. "I can save you, Willa Winters. I can give you back your life, your freedom, your strength. But nothing comes without a price. Do you understand?" "What price?" she whispered. "You called the king of the endless night. I am vampire, ancient and powerful, and I have not walked openly in your world for centuries. If I save you, if I take you from this place, you become mine. Under my protection, within my world, the human life you knew will be over." Willa looked at him, at this impossible being with his crimson eyes and his aura of leashed power, and then she looked around the cellar, at the tomb Marcus had made for her. She thought about going back to the world she'd known, where everyone believed Marcus's lies, where she had no one and nothing, where he could find her and finish what he'd started. "Yes," she said, "whatever the price is, I'll pay it. Please." Valdrin's expression shifted, something almost like approval crossing his features. "Very well. But first you need water, food, healing, and then we will deal with the one who did this to you." He lifted her as though she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest. She should have been frightened, should have been terrified, but instead she felt safe for the first time in months, years perhaps. He was cool to the touch, his body temperature far below human normal, but she found she didn't mind. "Hold on," he murmured, and then the world dissolved into shadow. When it reformed, they were no longer in the cellar. Willa blinked, disoriented, trying to process what she was seeing. They were in a bedroom, but unlike any bedroom she'd ever been in. The ceiling soared at least 20 feet above them, supported by columns of black marble. The bed was enormous, draped in deep crimson and black, and would have easily fit 6 people. Tapestries hung on the walls, ancient and beautiful, depicting scenes of battles and courts and creatures she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Candles burned everywhere, hundreds of them, providing that same cold silver light she'd seen in the cellar. "Where are we?" she asked. "My home," Valdrin said. "The realm between realms where vampires have dwelt since we withdrew from your world. You are safe here. No human can enter without my permission, and I am beyond any human power." He laid her gently on the bed, and she sank into softness that felt like clouds. A moment later, he returned with a crystal goblet filled with water. "Slowly," he cautioned as she reached for it desperately. "Too much too quickly will make you ill." Willa forced herself to take small sips, though every cell in her body screamed for her to gulp it down. The water was cool and pure, better than anything she'd ever tasted. When the goblet was empty, Valdrin took it and returned with food. Bread, cheese, fruit, all arranged on a silver platter. She ate slowly, her shrunken stomach protesting even as the rest of her rejoiced. As she ate, Valdrin sat in a high-backed chair near the bed, watching her with those unsettling crimson eyes. "Tell me about your husband," he said. "Tell me everything." So she did. It poured out of her, all the pain and fear and humiliation she'd kept locked inside. How Marcus had been charming at first, attentive and romantic. How slowly, so slowly she barely noticed, he'd started to change. The criticism that was just helpful advice, the jealousy that was just caring where she was, the isolation that was just wanting to spend time together. By the time she realized what was happening, she was trapped. He controlled the money, had convinced her to quit her job, had systematically destroyed every relationship she had outside of him. "I tried to leave twice," Willa said, her voice shaking. "The first time, he found me at my sister's house and convinced everyone I was having a breakdown. The second time, he destroyed everything I owned and told me if I ever tried again, he'd make sure I never saw my family again. I believed him. He has connections, money, influence. So I started planning, started hiding money, started building a case. When I finally filed for divorce, I thought I'd been so careful. But he knew. He knew everything. And he decided to kill you," Valdrin said, his voice flat. "He said it was my fault," Willa whispered. "He said I'd given him no choice, that I'd humiliated him, that I deserved this." She looked up at the Vampire King, this impossible being who had somehow answered her desperate prayer. "Why did you come? That book said you haven't walked openly in the human world for centuries. Why answer me?" Valdrin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "In all my long existence, I have heard many prayers, many desperate pleas. Most I ignore. Your world and mine have been separate for good reason. But yours," he paused, "yours was different. I heard such pain in it, such genuine desperation. And when I saw what had been done to you, I found I could not turn away. Perhaps I'm growing soft in my old age." "How old are you?" Willa asked. A slight smile touched his lips, the first real expression she'd seen on his face. "I was born when your ancestors were still painting in caves and worshipping the sun. I am the first of my kind, the progenitor of the vampire race. I have seen empires rise and fall, have watched humanity grow from primitive tribes to the complex civilization you have now. I am ancient beyond your ability to comprehend." Willa should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself fascinated. What happened? Why did vampires withdraw from the world? "We were becoming too visible," Valdrin said. "As humanity developed technology, as your numbers grew and your ability to communicate improved, it became harder to maintain the secret of our existence, and we were being hunted, not by common people, but by those who knew what we were and sought to destroy us. So I made a choice. I created this realm, a place between your world and the next, where we could exist in peace. Most of my kind were grateful. Some were not. But I am king, and my word is law." He stood, moving to look out a window that showed a view of impossible beauty. A city lay beyond, all spires and bridges and lights, but the architecture was wrong for any human city. Too elegant, too otherworldly. "Your husband is still in your house," Valdrin said, "going about his life as though he has not committed murder. What would you have me do with him?" Willa's hands clenched in the soft fabric of the bedding. "I want him to pay," she said. "I want him to face justice, to have everyone know what he did, but he won't. He's too smart, too connected. He'll say I ran away and everyone will believe him." "Perhaps in your world," Valdrin said, "but you are in my world now, and here I am justice." He turned to look at her, and his eyes were glowing faintly. "I could kill him for you. It would be simple, quick. He would simply cease to exist, and no one would ever find the body." The offer should have horrified her. Instead, Willa found herself seriously considering it. "No," she said finally. "I don't want to become like him. I don't want to be someone who decides who lives and dies." She paused. "But I do want him to be afraid. I want him to know what it feels like to be powerless and terrified." "Is that wrong?" "It is human," Valdrin said, "and perfectly understandable." "Very well. I will pay your husband a visit, and I will ensure he understands the consequences of his actions. But first, you need to rest. You are still weak, still healing." "I don't think I can sleep," Willa admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that cellar." Valdrin returned to the chair beside the bed. "Then I will stay with you. No harm will come to you here, Willa Winters. You have my word." She shouldn't have trusted him. She barely knew him, and he was a vampire, a predator by nature. But something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, made her believe him. She settled back against the pillows and for the first time in days felt her body begin to relax. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why do you look like that? The white hair, the pale skin. I thought vampires were supposed to blend in with humans." We can if we choose, Valdrin said. We can make humans see what we wish them to see. But this is our true form, the form we wear among our own kind. We are creatures of the night, born from darkness and shadow. This appearance reflects that nature. As for why white instead of another color, I cannot say. It is simply who we are. Willa studied him in the candlelight. He was beautiful, undeniably so, but it was an alien beauty. Nothing soft or comforting about it. He looked like he could destroy armies without breaking a sweat, like he could reshape the world with a word. And yet he'd come when she called. He'd saved her. Thank you, she said softly. I know you said there's a price, and I meant what I said. I'll pay it, but thank you for coming. Thank you for not leaving me there to die. Something shifted in Valdrin's expression, something almost vulnerable. You are welcome, he said, and his voice was gentler than before. Now rest. We will deal with everything else when you are stronger. Willa closed her eyes, and to her surprise, sleep came quickly. For the first time in months, she slept without nightmares. When she woke, she had no idea how much time had passed. There were no windows showing sunlight, no clocks on the walls. But she felt better, stronger. Her body still ached, but the desperate weakness was gone. She sat up slowly, finding herself alone in the enormous bedroom. A tray sat on the table beside the bed, laden with more food and a fresh goblet of water. She ate and drank, marveling at how good everything tasted. As she finished, the door opened and Valdrin entered. He looked exactly as he had before, not a hair out of place, his black clothing immaculate. You are awake, he observed. Good. How do you feel? Better, Willa said. Much better. She hesitated. How long was I asleep? By your world's reckoning, approximately 18 hours, Valdrin said. Time moves differently here, but I have been monitoring the passage of time in your realm. Your husband has reported you missing. He played the concerned spouse quite convincingly. Anger flared in Willa's chest. Of course he did. I'm going to visit him tonight, Valdrin said. Would you like to come with me? Willa's heart jumped. Can I? You are under my protection now. That means you have access to my power within certain limits. I can transport you as I transport myself, through shadow. And I can ensure your husband sees you, speaks with you, but cannot touch you. You would be perfectly safe. I want to go, Willa said immediately. I need to see his face when he realizes I survived. Valdrin nodded, as though he'd expected that answer. Then we will go after you have bathed and dressed. You will find suitable clothing in the wardrobe. He gestured to a massive wooden wardrobe that Willa hadn't noticed before. She approached it cautiously, opening the doors to reveal an array of clothing that looked like it belonged in a museum. Rich fabrics, deep colors, styles that ranged from medieval to Victorian to things she couldn't quite identify. I don't know how to wear any of this, she admitted. Choose what appeals to you, Valdrin said. I will help. Willa ran her hands over the fabrics, finally selecting a dress in deep burgundy. It was simpler than most of the others, with long sleeves and a high neckline, but the fabric was incredible, soft as silk, but with a weight to it that spoke of quality. Valdrin showed her to an adjoining bathroom that was as opulent as the bedroom, all marble and gold fixtures, with a tub large enough to swim in. She bathed quickly, scrubbing away the grime and fear of the cellar, then returned to find Valdrin waiting. He helped her into the dress, his cool fingers deft with the fastenings, and then brushed out her dark hair until it fell in smooth waves down her back. You look like you belong here, he said, studying her, like you were always meant for this world instead of the one you came from. Willa looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked stronger, fiercer, like someone who wouldn't let herself be locked in a cellar to die. Maybe I was, she said softly. Valdrin offered her his hand. Are you ready? She placed her hand in his, feeling the coolness of his skin, the strength in his grip. Yes. The world dissolved into shadow again, that disorienting sensation of being nowhere and everywhere at once, and then they were standing in her living room. The living room of the townhouse she'd shared with Marcus, with its modern furniture and its neutral colors and its complete lack of personality. It had never felt like home, she realized, just a place Marcus owned and she happened to occupy. Marcus was sitting on the couch, his phone in his hand, looking completely at ease. He was handsome in a conventional way, brown hair styled perfectly, wearing expensive casual clothes. When he looked up and saw them, his face went through a series of expressions so quickly it would have been funny under other circumstances. Shock, disbelief, fear, and then a desperate attempt at composure. "Willa," he said, standing up slowly, "you're alive. Thank God, I thought something terrible had happened to you." "Don't," Willa said, and her voice was steady. "Don't pretend. Don't lie. I know exactly what you did." Marcus's eyes flicked to Valdrin, and she saw fear bloom in them. Really saw it, saw him recognize that the being standing next to her was not human and not safe. "Who is that?" he demanded, trying to sound authoritative and failing. "This is Valdrin Dracul," Willa said, "the king of the endless night. I called him from the cellar where you left me to die, and he answered. He saved my life." "You're insane," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "There's no such thing as vampires." Valdrin moved, just a slight shift in position, but suddenly he seemed to fill the room. The lights flickered, and shadows writhed in the corners. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the windows rattle. "You are a fool, Marcus Winters. A cruel, petty fool who thought himself powerful because he could hurt someone weaker than himself. But you are nothing. Less than nothing. An insect pretending to be a wolf." Marcus stumbled backward, his face white. "Stay away from me." "I am not here to harm you," Valdrin said. "Though you deserve it, I am here to deliver a message. Willa Winters is under my protection now. She belongs to my world, not yours. If you ever speak of her, ever try to find her, ever even think of her with malice in your heart, I will know. And I will return. Do you understand?" "You can't do this," Marcus said desperately. "She's my wife. I have rights." "You have nothing," Valdrin said flatly. "The marriage is dissolved as of this moment. You will sign whatever papers are necessary to make that official in your world. You will tell everyone that Willa left you, that the marriage was a mistake, that you bear her no ill will. You will speak only good of her, if you speak of her at all, and you will never, ever try to contact her again." "And if I don't?" Marcus demanded, trying to summon some of his old arrogance. Valdrin smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Willa had ever seen. His teeth were white and perfect and very, very sharp. "Then I will show you what real monsters look like. I will drag you into the darkness and show you horrors that will shatter your mind. I will make you beg for death and then deny it to you for centuries. Do you understand me now, little man?" Marcus collapsed onto the couch, shaking. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I understand." Willa looked at her husband, at the man who had controlled and terrorized her for 2 years, and felt nothing but contempt. "You're pathetic," she said. "I wasted so much of my life being afraid of you, and you're just pathetic. I hope you live a long life, Marcus. I hope you have years and years to remember what you did, and know that you got away with it only because someone stronger than you decided to show mercy." She turned to Valdrin. "I'm done here. Can we go?" "Of course," Valdrin said. He looked at Marcus one last time. "Remember my words. There will be no second warning." Then the shadows rose again, and they were gone. They returned to Valdrin's realm, to that impossible bedroom with its candles and tapestries. Willa found she was shaking, adrenaline flooding her system. "Is it really over?" she asked. "Just like that?" "He will obey," Valdrin said with certainty. "He knows what I am now, knows I was not bluffing. He will sign your divorce papers, and he will leave you alone. And even if he does not, he cannot reach you here. You are beyond his ability to harm." Willa sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything. "What happens now? You said there was a price for saving me. What is it?" Valdrin was quiet for a moment. "Come," he said. "Let me show you something." He led her out of the bedroom, through corridors of black marble and silver stone, past windows that showed impossible vistas. They climbed stairs that spiraled upward, finally emerging onto a balcony that overlooked the city she'd glimpsed before. Now, closer, she could see it properly. It was beautiful beyond words, all graceful towers and delicate bridges lit by that same cold silver light. Figures moved through the streets below, pale and ethereal. "This is the Eternal City," Valdrin said, "the heart of the vampire realm. It has stood for 10,000 years, built by my hand and the hands of those I sired. 200,000 vampires live here and in the lands beyond. We have our own society, our own laws, our own culture. We are separate from humanity, and we like it that way." He turned to look at her. "The price I spoke of is this. You cannot return to your old life. Your existence in the human world is over. You will live here, in my realm, under my protection. You will be provided for, kept safe, given anything you need or want, but you will be bound to me, known as mine to all who see you. And in time, if you wish it, I can make you one of us, grant you immortality, power, freedom from human weakness. But that choice is yours to make, and you need not make it now. Willa stared out at the impossible city. Why me? She asked. You said you've heard thousands of prayers. Why answer mine? Why go to all this trouble for one human woman? Valdrin was silent for so long, she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful, almost uncertain. I have existed for millennia. I have had lovers, companions, even friends. But it has been a very long time since I felt moved by anything. The centuries blur together, one much like another. When I heard your voice, when I saw your situation, I felt something I had not felt in ages. Anger, yes, but also admiration. You were dying, completely powerless, and still you fought. Still, you sought a way to survive. You could have simply given up, let yourself drift away. But you did not. You called out into the darkness, not even truly believing, just desperate enough to try anything. That kind of strength, that kind of will to live, is rare, even among my own kind. He looked at her, and there was something in his crimson eyes that made her breath catch. I saved you because I wanted to. Because for the first time in centuries, I wanted something beyond the endless routine of ruling and existing. I wanted to know you, to speak with you, to see what you would become when given the chance to be free. Willa's heart was pounding. She should have been thinking about everything she was losing, about her family and her old life. But instead, all she could think about was the way Valdrin was looking at her, like she was something precious and rare, like she mattered. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said. My family wouldn't understand any of this. And I don't want to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life, wondering if Marcus changed his mind. So yes, I accept your terms. I'll stay here, under your protection, and maybe in time I'll become what you are. But right now, I just want to live. Really live without fear. Valdrin inclined his head. Then it is settled. You are mine, Willa Winters, under my protection and within my care. Welcome to eternity. Over the weeks that followed, Willa began to understand what that meant. Valdrin's realm was vast, far larger than she'd initially thought. There were forests and mountains, rivers and lakes, all existing in that strange twilight that never became full day or full night. The Eternal City was only one of several vampire settlements, though it was by far the largest and most important. Valdrin gave her a suite of rooms in his palace, chambers that were beautiful and luxurious beyond anything she'd known. He assigned her servants, pale, silent vampires who attended to her needs with quiet efficiency. She was given access to a library that held books from every era of human history, some of them predating written language. She had freedom to go where she wished within the realm, to explore and learn. But more than any of that, she had Valdrin's attention. He spent hours with her, teaching her about vampire society, about their history and customs. He told her stories of the ancient world, of civilizations long forgotten by humanity. He was patient with her questions, amused by her observations, protective when other vampires regarded her with curiosity or hunger, because she was human, and vampires fed on human blood. That was a reality she'd had to come to terms with quickly. Valdrin explained that most vampires in the realm fed from volunteers, humans who had chosen to enter the vampire world in exchange for the euphoria that came from a vampire's bite. There were strict laws about it, rules that prevented abuse, but the hunger was always there, the awareness that to every vampire except Valdrin, she was potential prey. You could feed from me, Willa said one evening. They were in his private study, a room lined with books and artifacts from across the ages. If you wanted to. Valdrin looked up from the ancient text he'd been reading. I could, he agreed. But I will not unless you truly wish it. You are under my protection. I will not use you as a food source. That's not what I meant, Willa said, feeling her cheeks heat. I've read some of your books. I know that feeding can be pleasurable, that it creates a bond. I was offering, not suggesting you were taking advantage. Valdrin set down his book, giving her his full attention. Why would you offer such a thing? Willa struggled to put her feelings into words. Because you saved my life. Because you've given me more in these few weeks than I had in years with Marcus. Because when you look at me, I feel like I matter. Like I'm more than just an inconvenience or a possession. She took a breath. And because I trust you. I know that sounds crazy, given what you are and how little time we've known each other. But I do. Valdrin rose from his chair, moving to stand before her. He was so tall that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You honor me with your trust, he said quietly, and I find I do not take it lightly. Very well. If this is what you wish, I will accept your offer. But understand, Willa, that such a bond is not a small thing. Once created, it is not easily broken. You will be tied to me in ways that go beyond simple protection. I understand, Willa said, and she did. She'd read enough in the library to know what she was asking for. I want this. Valdrin cupped her face in his cool hands, tilting her head to expose her throat. Then I accept, he murmured and bent his head. She felt his lips first, cool and soft against her skin. Then, the sharp pain of his fangs there and gone so quickly it barely registered. And then, pleasure intense and overwhelming, flooding through her body like liquid fire. She gasped, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders, and felt his arm wrap around her waist, holding her steady. It lasted only moments, but it felt like forever. When Valdrin finally lifted his head, Willa's knees were weak and her heart was racing. He looked different somehow, his eyes brighter, his expression more alive. Are you well? He asked, and his voice was rougher than usual. I'm perfect, Willa breathed. Is it always like that? Not always, Valdrin said. The bond between us makes it more intense, for both of us. He guided her to a chair, making sure she was steady. You should rest. The first time can be overwhelming. But Willa didn't feel overwhelmed. She felt energized, alive in a way she'd never experienced. And when she looked at Valdrin, she felt something else too. Something that had been building for weeks but that she'd been afraid to name. She was falling in love with him. It should have been impossible. He was a vampire, an ancient predator so far beyond human that they might as well be different species. But he was also kind, in his own way, patient and protective, and genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. He made her laugh with his observations about modern human culture. He challenged her intellectually, pushing her to think and learn. And when he looked at her, she felt seen in a way she never had before. The realization terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. As the weeks turned into months, that feeling only grew stronger. Valdrin seemed to feel it too, though he said nothing directly. He found excuses to spend time with her, to touch her hand or brush her hair back from her face. He brought her gifts, ancient treasures and modern books, anything he thought might please her. He introduced her to the vampire court, making it clear that she was under his personal protection and any disrespect shown to her would be answered severely. The court was a revelation in itself. Vampires from across the centuries gathered in Valdrin's palace, bringing news from the various regions of the realm. There were vampires who had been turned during the Roman Empire, during the Dark Ages, during the Renaissance. Each had their own personality, their own quirks, but all showed deference to Valdrin. He was not just a king, but the king, the oldest and most powerful of their kind. Willa attended court functions at Valdrin's side, learning the intricate politics of vampire society. There were factions and alliances, old grudges and new ambitions. Some vampires wanted to return to the human world, to reclaim the power they'd once held. Others were content in the realm, enjoying their immortal existence in peace. Valdrin balanced all of it with a firm hand, making decisions that kept the peace while maintaining his own authority. Do you ever regret it? Willa asked him one night. They were alone in his chambers, sharing wine that was far older than she was. Creating this realm, separating your people from humanity? Valdrin considered the question carefully. Sometimes, he admitted. There are things about the human world I miss, the chaos of it, the constant change. Here, everything is static, beautiful but unchanging. Centuries pass and very little shifts. He looked at her. But then I think about what would have happened if we had stayed. The wars we would have fought, the humans we would have had to kill to protect ourselves. The inevitable moment when your technology advanced enough to truly threaten us. No, I made the right choice, even if it sometimes feels like a beautiful prison. You could leave, Willa pointed out. You're the king. If you wanted to walk in the human world again, who would stop you? No one, Valdrin agreed. But I am responsible for my people. If I abandon them, if I return to the human world and draw attention to our existence, I risk everything we have built." He paused. "Though, I confess, you make me consider it. You make me want to show you things, places I have not seen in centuries. The pyramids of Egypt under moonlight, the gardens of Babylon before they fell, the northern lights dancing over frozen seas." "Some of those things don't exist anymore," Willa said gently. "No," Valdrin agreed, "but the memory of them does. And there are new wonders in your world now, things I have only observed from a distance. I would like to see them. With you." Willa's heart skipped. "You'd do that? Risk exposure just to show me the world?" "For you," Valdrin said, and there was something intense in his gaze. "I find I would risk a great deal." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Valdrin looked away, breaking the spell. "But that is a decision for another time. For now, you are still learning what it means to exist in this world. There is much you need to know before you can make an informed choice about your future." "What if I've already made my choice?" Willa asked quietly. Valdrin turned back to her, his crimson eyes searching her face. "Have you?" "I want to become like you," Willa said, the words she'd been holding back for weeks finally spilling out. "I want immortality, power, freedom from human weakness. I want to stand beside you not as someone you have to protect, but as an equal, or as close to an equal as I can become." "That is not a decision to make lightly," Valdrin warned. "Once done, it cannot be undone. You would be vampire with all that entails. The hunger for blood, the weakness to sunlight, the knowledge that you are fundamentally different from what you were born. And you would be bound to me completely, as your sire and your king. Is that truly what you want?" "Yes," Willa said without hesitation. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Valdrin rose from his chair, moving to stand before her. He took her hands in his cool skin against her warm. "Then I will grant your request. But not tonight. You have been in my realm only a few months. I want you to have more time, to be absolutely certain. If in 6 months you still feel the same, I will transform you myself. Does that seem fair?" 6 months felt like an eternity, but Willa understood his caution. "Fair," she agreed. Valdrin lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "You have become very dear to me, Willa Winters. More than I anticipated when I first answered your call. I find I want your happiness more than I have wanted anything in a very long time. If immortality is what will make you happy, then I will give it to you. But I need to know you are certain." "I am," Willa said. "But I'll wait. I'll prove to you that this isn't just gratitude or fascination, that what I feel is real." Something flickered in Valdrin's eyes. "What you feel?" he asked softly. Willa took a breath, deciding to be brave. "I'm in love with you," she said. "I know that's probably foolish. You're ancient and powerful, and I'm just a human you saved on a whim. But I can't help it. Every day I spend with you, I fall harder. You make me feel safe and valued and challenged all at once. You make me want to be better, stronger, and when you look at me, I feel like I could conquer the world." Valdrin stood very still, his expression unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing, and Willa felt panic rising in her chest. She'd gone too far, assumed too much. Then he pulled her to her feet, his hands framing her face, and kissed her. It was nothing like the feeding had been. That had been intense but impersonal, a physical act. This was intimate, tender, full of emotion that took her breath away. His lips were cool but soft, moving against hers with a gentleness that made her heart ache. She melted into him, her hands coming up to tangle in his white hair, and felt his arms wrap around her waist, pulling her close. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard despite Valdrin's lack of need for air, he rested his forehead against hers. "You are not foolish," he said, his voice rough. "And you are not just a human I saved on a whim. You are extraordinary, Willa. You are brave and intelligent and kind, and you have brought light into my existence in a way I did not know I needed. I have been fighting what I feel for you, telling myself it would be wrong to influence your choices, wrong to take advantage of the power imbalance between us. But I cannot fight it anymore. I love you. I love you with an intensity that frightens me, because I have not loved anyone in centuries, and I had forgotten how vulnerable it makes one feel." Willa's eyes filled with tears. "You're not taking advantage," she said fiercely. I chose this. I chose you. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are. Because you're honorable and kind, and you make me feel like I matter. You do matter, Valdrin said. You matter more than you know. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. The 6 months still stand. I will not risk your future happiness by rushing this. But know that when the time comes, when you are certain, I will transform you with joy, and I will spend the rest of eternity showing you how much you mean to me. Those 6 months were the happiest of Willa's life. She and Valdrin were inseparable, exploring the realm together, attending court functions as a couple, spending long nights talking and reading and simply being together. He taught her about vampire culture, about the delicate balance of power that kept their society functioning. She taught him about the modern human world, about technology and culture, and the ways humanity had changed since he'd withdrawn. They visited the various regions of the realm, from the frozen wastes in the north to the tropical forests in the south. Valdrin introduced her to vampires who had become legends in human culture, figures whose names had been lost to history but whose impact was undeniable. She met warriors and scholars, artists and scientists, all immortal, all building lives in this twilight realm. And through it all, Valdrin was attentive and affectionate, showing his love in 1,000 small ways. He brought her flowers that only bloomed in the vampire realm, their petals silver and luminous. He commissioned a portrait of her, painted by an artist who had studied under the Renaissance masters. He held her through the nightmares that still occasionally came, whispering reassurances until she calmed. Willa bloomed under his attention. She grew stronger, more confident, more herself than she had ever been. The woman who had been locked in a cellar to starve was gone, replaced by someone who could hold her own in vampire court, who could debate ancient beings without fear, who could stand beside a king and not feel diminished. When the 6 months were up, Valdrin came to her chambers as the eternal twilight deepened into what passed for night in the realm. "It has been half a year," he said quietly. "Have you changed your mind?" "No," Willa said. "I want this. I want you. I want forever." Valdrin pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Then tonight, I will give you eternity. But I must warn you, the transformation is not easy. It will hurt, and there's a small chance something could go wrong. My blood is ancient and powerful. It may overwhelm your system." "I trust you," Willa said simply. Valdrin led her to his chambers, to the enormous bed draped in crimson and black. He laid her down gently, settling beside her. "I will need to drain you almost to the point of death," he explained. "Then you will drink my blood. It will feel like dying and being reborn. You must hold on, no matter how much it hurts. Can you do that?" "Yes," Willa said. "Then we begin," Valdrin murmured and bent to her throat. This time there was no pleasure, only a pulling sensation, a feeling of her life draining away. Willa's vision grayed, her heartbeat slowing. Just when she thought she might lose consciousness, Valdrin pulled back. He bit into his own wrist, crimson blood welling up, and pressed it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. Willa drank. The blood was cold and sweet and strange, burning as it went down her throat. Pain exploded through her body, every nerve ending on fire. She tried to scream but couldn't, her throat locked. It felt like her bones were breaking and reforming, her organs reshaping themselves. She would have thrashed if Valdrin hadn't been holding her down, his hands firm but gentle. "Stay with me," he said, his voice cutting through the agony. "I know it hurts, but you must stay with me. You are so strong, my love. You can do this." Willa clung to his voice, using it as an anchor. The pain went on, endless, until she thought she might shatter from it. Then, gradually, it began to fade. The fire in her veins cooled. Her heartbeat, which had been hammering frantically, slowed and steadied into a new rhythm. The world came back into focus, and she realized everything looked different. Sharper, clearer. She could see every thread in the tapestries on the walls, could hear Valdrin's breath in the distant sounds of the palace. Scents flooded her nose, 1,000 different smells she'd never noticed before, and she felt strong, power humming through her body like electricity. "Willa," Valdrin said, and his voice was careful. "How do you feel?" She sat up slowly, marveling at how easy it was, how fluid her movements had become. She looked at her hands and saw they were pale now, the same luminous white as Valdrin's skin. She reached up to touch her hair and found it had changed too, transformed from dark brown to pure white. "I feel incredible," she breathed. "Is this what it's always like for you?" "Yes," Valdrin said, and he was looking at her with wonder. "You are beautiful, Willa. You were beautiful before, but now you're extraordinary." He handed her a mirror, and Willa stared at her reflection. The woman looking back at her was familiar, but changed. Her features were the same, but refined somehow, perfected. Her eyes had shifted from brown to a deep crimson. Her skin was flawless, pale, and smooth. She looked like she belonged in this world now, like she had always been meant to be vampire. The hunger will come soon, Valdrin warned. The need for blood. I have volunteers waiting if you wish. Or I can teach you to control it, to wait until you are more comfortable. Even as he spoke, Willa felt it. A gnawing emptiness in her stomach, a need that was both physical and something more. "I want to learn control," she said. "But maybe not tonight. Tonight I just want to be with you." Valdrin smiled, and it transformed his face. "Then that is what we shall do." They spent the night exploring her new abilities. Valdrin taught her to move through shadow, that disorienting but exhilarating way vampires traveled. He showed her how to enhance her senses, how to hear heartbeats from rooms away, how to see in complete darkness. He explained the limitations too, the weakness to sunlight that would confine her to the realm or to the night if she ventured into the human world. But none of it mattered, because she was with him, because she was strong now, powerful, eternal. Because when he looked at her, it was with love and pride and joy. As the eternal night deepened, Valdrin pulled her close. "You are mine now," he said softly. "My sire child, my beloved, my equal. I will cherish you for all of eternity, Willa. This I vow." "And I am yours," Willa said. "Forever." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Willa felt complete for the first time in her life. She had been broken, beaten down, left to die in darkness, but she had called out, and he had answered. And now she was reborn, transformed into something magnificent. The following years were a blur of happiness. Willa adapted to her new existence with surprising ease, learning to feed without killing, to use her powers without harming others. She became a fixture in Valdrin's court, respected and even feared by vampires who had centuries on her. Her bond with Valdrin only deepened, becoming something that inspired poetry among the vampire artists and envy among those who had never known such love. But their happiness was not without challenges. There were vampires who resented Valdrin's relationship with a newborn, who felt he was neglecting his duties as king. There were political tensions, disputes between factions that threatened to boil over into violence, and there was the ever-present question of the human world, the reality that despite their separation, vampires and humans were still connected in ways that could not be ignored. It was during a particularly contentious court session that everything came to a head. A vampire named Constantine, ancient and powerful in his own right, stood before Valdrin's throne with a demand. "We have hidden long enough," he declared. "Humanity grows stronger every day, their technology advancing at a pace we cannot match. Soon, they will have the ability to pierce the veil between our worlds. When that happens, we will be at their mercy, unless we strike first." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled vampires. Valdrin's expression remained neutral, but Willa could feel his tension through their bond. "You propose war," he said flatly. "I propose survival," Constantine countered. "We were apex predators once. We ruled the night, and humans feared us as they should. We can reclaim that position. With your power leading us, we could take the human world in a matter of months, reshape it to suit our needs." "And kill millions in the process," Willa said, unable to stay silent. "You're talking about genocide." Constantine's eyes flashed crimson as he turned to her. "You were human once. Perhaps that is why you are soft, but you are vampire now. You should understand that it is them or us." "That's not true," Willa argued. "Humans and vampires coexisted for thousands of years before Valdrin created this realm. It wasn't perfect, but it was possible. There has to be a way to maintain the separation without resorting to slaughter." "The human speaks wisdom," another voice said. An ancient female vampire named Seraphina stepped forward. "War would destroy us all. Even if we won, we would lose our souls in the process. Is that what we have become? Monsters who can only survive through murder?" The court erupted into arguments, vampires taking sides. Valdrin let it continue for a moment, then stood. The movement was slight, but the effect was immediate. Every vampire in the room fell silent, their attention locked on their king. "Enough," Valdrin said, and his voice carried absolute authority. "Constantine raises a valid concern. Humanity's technology does advance, and there may come a day when our realm is no longer hidden from them. But the solution is not genocide. It is not becoming the monsters they fear in their darkest nightmares." He descended from his throne, moving to stand among his people. "I created this realm to give us peace, to allow us to exist without constant warfare, without the need to hide and hunt and kill. If we abandon that now, if we return to the human world as conquerors, we lose everything we have built. We become exactly what drove us into hiding in the first place." "Then what do you propose?" Constantine demanded. "Vigilance," Valdrin said. "We monitor the human world, watch for any sign that our existence is threatened, and we prepare. Not for war, but for the possibility of revelation. If the day comes when humans discover us, we will be ready to negotiate from a position of strength, to offer coexistence rather than domination. But until that day, we remain separate, we remain hidden, and we remain at peace." It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but it was enough. Constantine backed down, though Willa could see the resentment in his eyes. The court dispersed, vampires returning to their various territories with much to discuss. That night, alone in their chambers, Valdrin pulled Willa into his arms. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for speaking up, for reminding them that we were not always monsters." "You're not monsters," Willa said fiercely. "You're people, the same as humans. Different, yes, but not evil, not inherently." "You have more faith in us than we sometimes have in ourselves," Valdrin said. He kissed her forehead gently. "I fear Constantine will not let this go. He has always been ambitious, always chafed at my rule. This may be the beginning of something dangerous." "Then we'll face it together," Willa said. "Whatever comes, we're in this together." Valdrin smiled, though there was sadness in it. "I wish I could give you the peace you deserve, the safety." "I don't need peace," Willa said. "I need purpose, I need to matter, and I need you. Everything else we'll figure out." She was right to be concerned about Constantine. Over the following months, the ancient vampire became increasingly vocal in his opposition to Valdrin's rule. He gathered supporters, vampires who longed for the old days when they held power over humans. There were whispers of rebellion, of a challenge to Valdrin's authority. It came to a head on a night like any other. Valdrin was holding court when Constantine strode in, flanked by 24 vampires. "I challenge you," he declared, his voice ringing through the hall. "I challenge your right to rule, your authority as king. You have grown weak, distracted by your human pet. You have forgotten what it means to be vampire." The hall fell into shocked silence. Challenges were rare, almost unheard of in recent centuries. Valdrin rose slowly from his throne, his expression cold. "You would challenge me? You, who have lived barely 3,000 years, would challenge the progenitor of our race?" "I would," Constantine said. "By the old laws, by the right of combat. Fight me, Valdrin. Prove you are still worthy to lead us." Valdrin's eyes blazed crimson. "Very well. But know this, Constantine. If I defeat you, your existence ends. There will be no mercy, no second chances. You have made your choice, and it will have consequences." The combat was set for 3 nights hence, giving both vampires time to prepare. Willa was terrified, though she tried to hide it. Valdrin was ancient and powerful, but Constantine was no weakling, and the thought of losing him, of being without him after everything they had been through, was unbearable. "He cannot defeat me," Valdrin assured her the night before the challenge. "I am the oldest, the strongest, but I appreciate your concern." "Promise me," Willa said desperately. "Promise me you'll come back to me." Valdrin cupped her face in his hands, his crimson eyes intense. "I promise. Nothing in this world or any other could keep me from you. I will end this challenge, remove this threat, and then we will have peace, true peace, for as long as we wish it." The combat took place in the great arena beneath the palace, a vast circular space that had not been used in centuries. Every vampire in the Eternal City gathered to watch, thousands of them filling the stands. Willa sat in the place of honor beside the throne, her hands clenched so tightly her nails drew blood from her palms. Valdrin and Constantine faced each other in the center of the arena. Both had shed their usual finery, wearing simple black. Both looked deadly, predators ready to strike. "Last chance to withdraw," Valdrin offered. "Never!" Constantine snarled and attacked. The fight was brutal and beautiful. They moved faster than human eyes could follow, blurs of motion and power. They wielded the ancient magic of their kind, shadow and blood and pure force. The arena shook with the impact of their blows. Willa watched, her heart in her throat, as Valdrin fought with a ferocity she had never seen from him. It became clear, as the combat wore on, that Constantine was outmatched. Valdrin was simply too old, too powerful, too skilled. But Constantine fought with the desperation of someone who knew defeat meant death. He landed blows that would have killed lesser vampires, tore wounds that would have crippled any other opponent. But Valdrin healed from every injury, his ancient blood knitting flesh and bone back together. And slowly, methodically, he wore Constantine down. The final blow came swiftly. Valdrin's hand punched through Constantine's chest, emerging with his heart. The ancient vampire staggered, his eyes wide with shock and fear. "You challenged a king," Valdrin said coldly. "You threatened the peace I have worked for millennia to maintain, and you insulted the woman I love. These are your sins, Constantine, and this is your punishment." He crushed the heart in his hand. Constantine crumbled to dust. His existence ended in an instant. The arena was silent. Then, slowly, the vampires began to applaud, not in joy, but in respect. Their king had proven his strength, had reminded them all why he ruled. Valdrin stood in the center of the arena, covered in blood and dust, and bowed to his people. Then he turned and walked directly to Willa. He pulled her into his arms, heedless of the blood covering him, and kissed her fiercely. "I told you I would return," he said. Willa was crying, she realized, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. "I know. I should have had more faith." "You had plenty of faith," Valdrin said gently. "You had love, which is more precious. Come. Let us leave this place. I have had enough of violence and politics for one night." They returned to their chambers, and Willa helped Valdrin wash away the blood of combat. As she tended to him, she thought about everything they had been through, from that first desperate moment in the cellar to now, standing beside a king who had just proven his right to rule. It seemed impossible, like a fairy tale, but it was real. All of it was real. "What are you thinking?" Valdrin asked, studying her face. "That I love you," Willa said simply. "That I would go through everything again, every moment of pain and fear, if it meant ending up here with you." Valdrin pulled her close. "You will never have to go through such things again. I will make certain of it. You are mine, Willa, my love, my queen, my everything, and I will spend eternity proving that to you." "Queen?" Willa asked, her heart skipping. Valdrin smiled. "Did you think I would not make you my equal in all things? You stood with me today, in front of the entire court. You have earned the right to rule beside me if you wish it." "I wish it," Willa said without hesitation. "I wish all of it, forever with you." "Then forever you shall have," Valdrin promised. The coronation took place a month later, a grand ceremony that drew vampires from every corner of the realm. Willa was crowned Queen of the Endless Night, her equal standing with Valdrin recognized by all. She wore a gown of deep crimson and black, with a crown of silver and rubies that caught the light like captured stars. As she stood beside Valdrin, looking out at the sea of pale faces and crimson eyes, Willa thought about the woman she had been. Trapped, afraid, slowly dying in a cellar because her husband had decided she was worthless. That woman was gone, transformed into someone strong and powerful and loved, and it had all started with a whispered name, a desperate prayer to a being she hadn't truly believed existed. Valdrin took her hand, squeezing gently. Through their bond, she felt his love, his pride, his absolute devotion. She squeezed back, letting him feel the same from her. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. The human world changed and evolved, technology advancing in ways that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. The vampire realm remained hidden, but Valdrin and Willa watched carefully, always prepared for the day when humanity might discover them. But that day never came. Or if it did, it was so far in the future that they had centuries of peace before it. Centuries to love and laugh and rule together. Centuries to explore every corner of their realm and occasionally venture into the human world, careful and concealed. Willa never forgot where she came from, never forgot the darkness of that cellar or the monster who had put her there, but she also never let those memories define her. She was more than what had been done to her. She was queen, vampire, beloved. She was eternal, and she was happy. One night, perhaps 500 years after her transformation, Willa and Valdrin stood on the balcony of their palace, looking out at the eternal city spread below them. It had grown over the centuries, expanded and evolved, but it remained beautiful, a testament to what their kind could build when given peace. "Do you ever regret it?" Valdrin asked, the same question he had asked her centuries ago but turned around. "Calling my name that night? Accepting immortality?" Willa turned to look at him, this ancient being who had become everything to her. He looked exactly as he had that first night, white hair and crimson eyes and pale skin, unchanging and eternal. "Never," she said. "Not for a single moment. You saved me, Valdrin. In every way a person can be saved. You gave me life and love and purpose. How could I ever regret that?" Valdrin smiled, pulling her into his arms. "I was going to say the same to you. You saved me too, you know. From an existence that had become hollow and meaningless, you reminded me what it was to feel, to hope, to love. Everything I am, everything I have, I would give it all up if it meant keeping you by my side." "You'll never have to make that choice," Willa said. "We have forever. Together." "Together," Valdrin agreed, and kissed her as the eternal twilight deepened around them. Far below, in the human world they had left behind, life continued its endless march. People were born and died, loved and lost, struggled and triumphed. Among them, in a city far from where Willa had once lived, records showed that a woman named Willa Winters had been declared legally dead after disappearing without a trace. Her ex-husband, Marcus, had lived out his life in quiet obscurity, never speaking of what had happened that night when a vampire king had threatened him. He died eventually, as all humans do, taking his secrets to the grave. But Willa Winters did not die. She lived on, ageless and powerful, ruling a realm of shadows and beauty beside the man she loved. She had called out in desperation, and he had answered. She had offered her trust, and he had cherished it. Together, they had built something magnificent, and they would continue to build it for all of eternity. Because that was what immortal love meant, not just endless time, but endless possibility, endless growth, endless joy. Willa had been locked in a cellar to starve, left to die by someone who should have protected her. She had whispered a name into the darkness, not truly believing, just desperate enough to try. And the vampire king had appeared. He had saved her. She had saved him, and together they had found forever. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the pain that had come before, not the challenges they had faced, but the love they had built, strong enough to last through centuries, deep enough to transform them both, eternal enough to never end. As Valdrin held her in his arms, as the stars wheeled overhead in patterns only immortals lived long enough to recognize, Willa knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. All of them, from that first whispered name to this moment, had been right. She was exactly where she belonged, with him forever, and that was the most beautiful ending of all.